Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Random Rewatch. This is your host, Mike, and we are headed back to the 1980s, specifically April 1988. Now, if you, like me, grew up in this era, then you are probably a fan of, like, gritty crime dramas. This one is a big heavy hitter. We're going to talk about Dennis Hopper's Colors, almost a documentary in terms of its style, and definitely a powerhouse drama in terms of its story. This movie takes a really hard look at Los Angeles street gangs in the 1980s, specifically the Bloods, the Crips, and some of the Hispanic street gangs that were around during that time. And it's going to mix this kind of sun-bleached Los Angeles energy with a legendary soundtrack and powerhouse performances by Robert Duvall and a very young, very intense Sean Penn. We're going to break it down for you, so let's get started.
Hey, Blood.
The gangs rule the streets. The streets are at war. The war must be stopped.
We want a uniformed presence out in the street. They're flying their colors. We're flying ours.
If I do something, I expect you to back me up.
My partner, McGavin. New partner.
You get them off the street.
Lady, we're trying.
Our community had kids out there who are dying over colors. I mean, actually dying over red or blue.
How old are you? 18. How old are
So
you?
this movie started out by screenwriter Rich DeLello. DeLello started his professional life as a photographer, like a rock photographer, who did some pretty famous photo shoots with like Janis Joplin, John Lennon, Yoko Ono, George Harrison, the Raspberries, a bunch of other bands. He had written the 1983 movie Bad Boys. This script he wrote, it was an original idea that he wrote. Originally, this story was set in Chicago, not Los Angeles. And it was more about drug dealing and like the situation on the streets than it was about the actual gang members and the people that were involved. So he reached out to his buddy Robert Solo, who was a film producer. He had been the producer on Bad Boys. Solo started pitching the movie around, but also kind of floating it around to some actors, and a young Sean Penn got a hold of it. He loved the idea of the story. He's the one who suggested Dennis Hopper to Solo. And so Dennis Hopper at the time, obviously a well-known actor going way, way back, but also had directed the film Easy Rider and then hadn't directed another film for like 19 years. Hopper's the one who had the story changed to be in LA, and he also wanted it to dive deeper into like the personalities and the people involved. He brought in screenwriter Michael Schiffer. We talked about Schiffer in our Crimson Tide episode, and they came up with this whole kind of cinema verite documentary style when they brought in Haskell Wesker to shoot the film. Schiffer wound up writing with actual LAPD crash cops. I think it was part of a Medium article, and so he was familiar with them, and that's one of the reasons that he got brought into this. And he gave it a real kind of gritty, like in-your-face style in terms of the storytelling, but also he really dove into like the characters in these various gangs and the police, and really made it more about the people involved than about what was going on. Like the whole gang thing is almost a backdrop to the human drama that's going on in this film. And I think that's kind of what sets this movie apart from a lot of other quote unquote gritty crime dramas. I want to talk about the music. So the score was done by jazz icon Herbie Hancock. It is a really good score, but what people really remember about this film is the soundtrack. If you're wondering what I mean by that, the score is like the instrumental music that's composed specifically for this film. The soundtrack is songs that are brought in to fill out. And the main one is the title song Colors, which is composed and performed by Ice-T. And I'm gonna tell you, man, this song was everywhere back in 1988. The film was shot in LA in 1987. It's hard to really hide that fact, and why would you want to? LA is It's one of these films where LA is just as much a character as anybody else. So let's get into it. So we start off this film with a title scroll about the LA Crash Gang Unit. So it tells us that both the LA Sheriff's Department and the Los Angeles Police Department each have their own anti-gang unit. The Sheriff's Department is called OSS for Operation Safe Streets. The LAPD's is called Crash, Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums. I did not make that up, and that is actually the real name of the real-life task force. And that combined, there are 250 men and women involved. It then goes on to say that Los Angeles has over 600 street gangs with over 17,000 members. So you're getting the idea that they are a little bit outnumbered. So we're going to meet our two protagonists in the story. The first one is veteran police officer Bob Hodges, played by the great Robert Duvall, who is the reason we are doing this movie right now. So Duvall was a what's known as a Navy brat. His father is actually a rear admiral. I did not know that. His father expected him to go into the Navy Academy, but he didn't want to, so he enlisted in the Army right after the Korean War, served a couple years in Georgia, and then used the GI Bill to attend the neighborhood playhouse school in New York City. He started his professional acting career at the Gateway Playhouse in Long Island, New York, and did a bunch of plays throughout the 1950s at the Gateway. In 1959, he was the lead in A Streetcar Named Desire, played Stanley Kowalski. Did a bunch of off-Broadway stuff as well. And he was also in a episode of Armstrong Circle Theater on television, and then did some other TV appearances and shows like Naked City, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Untouchables, Route 66, Twilight Zone. His first film was in 1962. He played Bo Radley in To Kill a Mockingbird. Did a couple other films in the 60s, including Bullet and True Grit. In 1970, he played the role of Major Frank Burns in the Robert Altman film MASH. Some of you may not know it was a movie before it was a TV series, and it was a novel before it was a movie. His first real breakout, big critical success was in The Godfather in 1972, and then The Godfather Part 2 in 1974. He earned an Academy Award nomination for his role in The Godfather. He had a small uncredited role in Francis Ford Coppola's film The Conversation in 1974, which is a film that I recommend everybody take a watch of. It's a Gene Hackman film, and it really is kind of a precursor, and some people would say it's a spiritual prequel to Enemy of the State, because Hackman basically plays the same character. But that's a digression. By the mid-70s, he was really like one of Hollywood's top character actors. And 1979, he had another real breakout role in another Francis Ford Coppola film, Apocalypse Now. Got another Oscar nomination in 1979 for The Great Santini. And he would just continue on to work, including True Confessions in 81, The Natural in 84, this film in 88, Tender Mercies. Started doing some quote-unquote old man roles in the 1990s, Days of Thunder, Falling Down. Just continued to keep on working. Jack Reacher in 2012, where he played a retired Marine Corps gunnery sergeant. And all the way up until 2022, which was his last two roles in Hustle and The Pale Blue Eye. So an amazing career, and probably one of the top 3 or 4 actors of the last 60 years. The other protagonist in this film is police officer Danny McGavin, played by Sean Penn, who, as of this recording, just won an Oscar a couple days ago, which I believe is his third. Penn's first film was in the movie Taps in 1981, and his first real kind of noticed role was as Jeff Spicoli in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, the Amy Heckerling film in 1982. And then he did Bad Boys in 1983, At Close Range in 1986. And as I said, he's won 3 Oscars, Best Actor for Mystic River in 2003 and Milk in 2008, and then Best Supporting Actor this year for One Battle After Another. So anyway, we meet these guys, and there is a police briefing where we are learning about the situation on the ground with the gangs.
We want a uniformed presence out in the street. They're flying their colors, we're flying ours. I want them to know who they're dealing with. They got Uzis, they got shotguns, they got explosives, they got access to any kind of weapon they want within 24 hours. We got over 50,000 gangs.
We find out that McGavin is a bit of a wise guy and likes to kind of joke around. Doesn't seem to really take things very seriously. Whereas Hodges, Vietnam vet, is all about the job and just being serious. So McGavin gets assigned to Hodges, and the two of them going out on patrol. So we start to meet some of the gang members. So the guys in the blue are the Crips, and we see Damon Wayans and Don Cheadle playing T-Bone and Rocket. And these guys are complete opposites. T-Bone is, I don't know, he's kind of a little loony and talks weird, and it's honestly a pretty typical Damon Wayans role at this point. And Rocket, on the other hand, Don Cheadle, very serious, very intense, very dangerous. Cheadle had a couple of minor roles, but had a slightly bigger role in 1987 in Hamburger Hill, and then a similar role in this film. So we see a drive-by shooting. We're going to see a couple of those in the movie, and we see Danny and Hodges out on the street. And Hodges has this really kind of easygoing, you know, you do for me, I do for you, kind of a transactional style. But, you know, the guys in the gangs kind of appreciate him and respect him because he's always, you know, he treats them decently and he's kind of looking out for them a little bit. He doesn't press on them too hard for minor stuff. You do me a favor, I'll do you a favor. And, you know, he honors those favors. So we see there's a bit of a gang roundup, and we meet High Top, played by Glenn Plummer, and we see an example of that kind of transactional style that Hodges has.
I'm Hodges. Ask around who I am, all right?
Yeah.
You owe me one, okay?
Yeah.
Got that?
Yes, sir.
Say it.
I owe you one.
Okay. Get out of here.
We also see that Hodges and McGavin have very different styles. McGavin is much more of a hard ass, and he's ready to kind of write these guys up and bring them in for like minor things, when Hodges is like willing to kind of let minor stuff go. And we see a bit of tension and a bit of friction between the two of them, where Danny's like, look, I expect you to back me up. And, you know, Hodges is trying to get him to kind of lighten up a little bit.
What's that?
What?
I made a righteous caller back there, partner. If I do something, I expect you to back me up, and I hope you expect the same.
Oh. You don't even know the neighborhood yet. You want to drag him in for a pissy little rock to spend the rest of the shift doing paperwork? Is that what you call a plan?
You want to hear a plan? I got a plan.
Yeah.
We get him for rock, then they get him for something else, and when he does something serious, it's not a first offense.
And Hodges is like, look, these guys are wild. He realizes that the people in these neighborhoods, as well as the gang members, like they are, you know, on one level, they're kind of like these vulnerable, marginalized people. And he realizes that they are watching every move the police makes. And he thinks the best approach is to build like trust between the community and the police. And so he tells this story, this Two Bulls story about, you know, a young bull and an old bull standing on a hill watching a field of cows. And, you know, the young bull wants to rush down and get with one of the cows, and the old bull is like, no, let's just walk down and we'll get with all of them. And, it's kind of like this two-pronged approach, right? Is McGavin is looking to rush in and hit everything, and Hodges says, look, you have a better end result if you just take it slow and don't spook the cows, so to speak. So they stop for lunch, and we meet Louisa, who is played by Maria Conchita Alonso, who we first met in our episode on The Running Man. And Danny and Louisa kind of hit it off right away. So the guys are out on patrol, and somebody throws a rock at the car, and they go to chase some kids. And Hodges takes them down into, I don't know, like this drainage ditch or something. And we meet the 21st Street Gang, or one of the 21st Street Gang members, a few of them. And this is a Latino gang, but it's kind of mixed. So we meet Whitey, who's played by Courtney Gaines, and Bird, who's played by Geraldo Mejia. And the guys get out of the car, and Danny has got the shotgun, and Hodges tells him to put it away. This isn't this kind of thing, and so this conflict is still going on. We also meet Looney Tunes, who's played by Grant Bush, who most people would probably know from Die Hard, where he played Agent Johnson. No, the other one. And we also meet Frog, who's played by Trinidad Silva, who is well known probably for his role in the cop TV series Hill Street Blues. So Frog kind of teases Hodge about, still trying to build rapport with the gangs, and Hodge just tells him what's going on, that somebody throwing a rock at the car, and they see the kid who's up in a tree, and it's Frog's little brother. And, Frog is not that happy with the fact that he threw a rock at a cop car.
What's my little brother doing up in that tree? Thinks he's a monkey, eh?
Stay up there.
You heard the man.
So we see that these two guys have a pretty good relationship, and that's gonna come back later. There's a community meeting where the police are asking people in the community for help with the gangs, and Ron Delaney is there, who's like a community organizer who is a former gang member. That's he's played by Randy Brooks, and the crowd is not all that really happy about it. We have a really good speech by a very young Tony Todd, who would go on to be well known as the Candyman and for several roles in Star Trek, Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine, and also movies like The Rock.
I know all about being outgunned, all right? I mean, I was in Vietnam. Yeah. Right. And it ain't about what you got in your hand. It's about what the people want.
That's what it is, man. But doggone right, that's what it is. What it is, man. It's what the people want,
Hey,
man.
just wait a minute. Let the man talk, all right? Let the man talk.
I used to run with a gang, all right? Now I work with them. I just want to make a point here, all right? The reality on the street is that the dope dealer has got the Mercedes-Benz, the instant money, and the women. Now, these kids have eyes. They see what's going on. And that is their socialization. It's the values that they respect. Now, we don't educate them. We don't give them jobs.
And then there was a funeral, and this is one of the Bloods gang members that were killed in the drive-by shooting. And there is a local preacher there who is played by Troy Kirby Jr., and he is not holding back when it comes to the gangs.
Too long by these sawed-off gangsters. These gangbangers, as they call themselves. And now it is time for decent folk, for the people of God to start banging back. Amen. Are we afraid of these hoodlums? No. I said, are we afraid of these terrorists?
So there's a drive-by shooting at the funeral, retribution for the earlier one, and there's a really good car chase, and it's really funny because these are these are older, late 70s, early 80s cars, and they're big and they're heavy and they're swinging around all over the place. The car driven by the Crips gang, the one that did the shootout, is driven by a young woman, and this is Sharon Schaefer, who is a stunt woman, but she does get time in the movie. And the pursuit ends in a car wreck into the Watts Towers, which are a famous sculpture in the Watts area of Los Angeles. And so those guys are all rounded up, and then we cut to a cookout at the Hodges house, and we meet Bob Hodges' family. Danny is there, and he has brought Louisa with him, but Hodges pulls him aside, and they have a conversation, and you know, Hodges is trying to calm him down and let him know that, you know, there's a couple of different ways to approach this, and one of them is going to make the situation better, and one of them is going to make the situation worse. And he's trying to get him to come on the side of, you know, de-escalating and building relationships with the people in the gangs.
Now, in 19 years, I've learned one thing. If you try to fight every jerk on the street, you'll be one sad, sorry son of a bitch at the end of every day. You'll never last 20 years. And God forbid if you ever get married and take it out on your wife. She will walk. She will leave you. So why make it worse all the time?
Is that one thing?
Yeah, one thing. It's all one thing.
And Danny, you know, Danny's not there to hear it. He's not about, as he puts it, being nice. He's there to stop the gang violence. There's a scene of Ron who's trying to talk to the 21st Street gang members, and you know, basically it's the attitude is like nobody really wants to talk to anybody. Nobody wants to sit down and give up their ways and try to make the community better for everybody. Everybody's just stuck in their lanes, stuck in doing what they're doing. And as soon as Ron starts to push on the 21st Street a little bit, they start to push back on him and are like, nobody asked you to help us. And we also see that McGavin, Danny McGavin and Louisa, you know, hooked up. They spent the night together. So that's happening. Hodges and Danny get a new car, a bright yellow car, which is going to lead Danny to get the name Pac-Man, the nickname on the street. So there's a bunch of raids going on, and they Hodges and Danny find some kids in an alley, but Hodges winds up letting them go, and there's just this continued conflict, and Danny keeps pushing back on Bob. On Hodges, and it turns out that one of the kids that Hodges let go was involved with a bigger crime, and Danny's giving him, you know, that we had him and you let him go. And
what do we have? A piece of rock, big deal. Did we know he was tied in here?
Oh, hey, what, Uncle Bob make a mistake?
You want to go and second guess me?
No, I want to go and bust him.
So what are you going to do? Pull a fire extinguisher out of his ass?
Well, I'll plant one there if I have to, and then you can pull it out so you don't have to be dicking around in the car all the time.
They're on a patrol, and they catch some kids spray painting graffiti on a wall, and they roll up on them, and they get one of the kids, and Hodges is doing his normal, you know, get out of here thing, and Danny takes a minute to stop the kid and takes a can of spray paint and sprays it right in his face until Hodges stops him. And then those two, you know, they get in another fight, and they get in a conversation about, you know, excessive force and how they should be policing. And it really almost comes down to blows with these guys.
You handle me? You think I'm over the hill? You want a piece of me right now? Huh? You think you got the market cornered? You think I'm not crazy? Go ahead, try me. Try me, you.
What are you talking about?
That's what I thought.
Hey, Hodges. Uncle Bob. I don't have any problem with you.
Oh, no? You got problems with the whole world, and I'm in it. And I don't like it.
And at some point, Hodges is letting him know that, you know, he's gonna get a new partner, basically, because he doesn't think that he could work with Danny. Meanwhile, Danny goes to see Maria, and she won't talk to him, and he doesn't understand why. And it turns out that the kid whose face he spray painted was her cousin, so now she's all mad at him.
I wear it. That's my job. That's what I do. So what do you want?
The other day you caught this boy and put paint all over his face. Well, he's my cousin. Oh, that's funny.
I didn't know you had such a big family.
Frog winds up coming to Hodges for a favor. Apparently, his brother or somebody else got arrested for something, and Frog doesn't want him in the system, so he's asking Hodges if Hodges could kind of get him off. And Hodges goes back to doing this whole, you know, transactional thing. He's like, you know, you owe me now.
Orale. I know the routine, Holmes. I owe you one. You know, that's what makes this country great, Holmes.
What's that?
Credit. You got your Visa card. I got you, Holmes. Thanks, Holmes.
And as Frog's walking out, turns out that somebody recognizes him and he's got a warrant, so then he gets arrested. They're on patrol at the beach and they spot High Top, who was involved in one of the earlier incidents, so they try to chase him and they wind up getting him. There's a fight in a restaurant where Hodges actually gets a little rough with him. And then this is where they sit down and they have this conversation, and Hodges likens having a bad partner to being in a bad marriage, and he's like, you know, at some point you realize that it's just not going to work, and you just need to, you know, you're trying to try it, but then at some point you just need to get out. We see High Top gets beat up in the prison yard by the rival gang, so he makes a deal with the guys in the correction office to give some information and they'll get him out of general population and get him into a restricted unit, so he'll be safer. And so he kind of turns on Rocket for doing one of the drive-bys. Now they're out looking for Rocket's van, and they find it, but Rocket's not there, but they arrest the guys who were in it. And now they have this scene in the interrogation room. They got the two guys in the different interrogation room, and they start working them against one another. And Danny gets a little information from one guy and then goes into the room where Hodges was with the other guy and starts to drop that information so that the second guy thinks the first guy talked, and then he gives up more information.
You know that chick hangs out with Cheryl Williams and Annie?
I don't think so.
Yeah, sure. You know what I mean. Sexy little thing. This is wild. Lois, what is the name of that girl?
Sharon?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right, Sharon,
I don't know. Robbins?
So now they think they know where Rocket's going to be, and they go and they have a raid with the sheriff's office, and they go in and they see him in there, and he's in bed with a woman. They can't see his face, but the guy reaches for a gun, and so they shoot him, and it turns out that it's not Rocket, it's this other gang member, Killaby. But the Crips think that the whole thing came from Pac-Man, Danny, because somebody saw him there. So then the Crips wind up putting a hit out on McGavin. And then the stuff like T-Bone gets arrested, and he's talking, he's in jail, Frog's in jail, and T-Bone is, running his mouth. And so Frog overhears what he's talking about, and he overhears about the hit. So Hodges kind of accidentally outs Frog as his source, and so the Crips find out, and they put a hit on the 21st Street, so they do a drive-by on the 21st Street gang, and then the 21st Street gang comes down, and they do an assault on the Crips hideout, and they kill everybody. And then we get to the end, and there's like this big shootout, and Hodges winds up getting shot by one of the guys in the 21st Street gang, and he winds up just whisper, like laying on the ground. He's got this big hole in his chest. It's actually a pretty brutal effect of the blood spreading, and Danny's with him, and he's just whispering like, call my wife, and he winds up dying there. So now we have a little bit of a time jump, and Danny is out with his new partner, and this kid is like a real hotshot, and Danny is kind of folded into the older, wiser veteran role.
So I keep my back up on my inside left ankle. We ever get in any hostage situation, I call you by my name, you drop it, vice versa, whatever it is.
You ain't even got to worry about no hostage situation, partner, because now, see, you got yourself a bad, black, kick-ass rock and roll type cop force.
And so he winds up telling the bull story, the story about the two bulls, to this young kid very badly. But this is the next phase in the cycle. It just keeps going. Some people get taken out, they get replaced by someone else, and nothing is really changing. Except maybe Danny. Maybe Danny has learned something through this whole process. And that's the end of the movie. The movie opened on April 15th, 1988. It was picketed by a lot of anti-gang groups, including the Guardian Angels, because they thought that it was glorifying gang violence. And this is like one of these things that I think we mentioned it before, maybe in the Platoon episode. This idea of that, I think Francois Truffaut was the first one to say it. It's like, all war movies are pro-war movies in the sense that even if you're showing a movie that is supposed to be anti-war, the fact that it contains battle scenes, some people are going to watch it and be like, yeah. And so even though this story is depicting gang violence as being a dead end, some people are just going to watch it and be like, yeah, that looks cool. So, in some way they have a point, but I think they're missing the larger picture. Anyway, it opened at number 2 behind Beetlejuice. It had a $6 million budget and wound up making $46 million in its theatrical run, which is really good. It only opened domestically. This film did not go overseas. It's got a 75 on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got a 66 on Metacritic. It's got a B- on CineScore. Some people liked it, some people didn't. Louise Hart of the BBC said the main weakness of the film is that it concentrates far less on the street gangs than on the growing relationship between the two cops. I guess she kind of missed the point. Janet Maslin of the New York Times said that it has a superb eye for the poisonous flowering of gang culture amid ghetto life and an ear to match, along with brilliant cinematography by Haskell Wexler. It's also got a fierce, rollicking sense of motion. Our guy Roger Ebert thought it was a special movie, not just a police thriller, but a movie that has researched gangs and given some thought to what it wants to say about them. He gave it 3.5 stars. So this was a polarizing movie back in the day. I think to some degree it still is. Obviously, policing and the way that police departments and law enforcement deals with gang members is very different today. The way gang life is very different today. So this movie, kind of like The Warriors, is a snapshot more than anything that's going to tell us something relevant about life today, other than the fact that, the cycle just continues, and this type of violence and this type of friction between communities, whether it's different groups in the community or law enforcement and the community at large, that type of friction is not going to be beneficial to anybody, really. So that is Colors. Thank you for listening, as always. Check out our merch store. We got some cool new t-shirts in the store. And thank you for listening or watching on YouTube, whatever you're doing. We really appreciate it. And we will catch you next time.